They leveled my family's 80-year-old bridge with a bulldozer at dawn on a Tuesday. Filmed it on their phones, laughing as the stones my grandfather placed back in 1943 collapsed into the creek below. What they didn't realize was that I owned the only alternate road leading into their gated subdivision. Every one of those 85 homes depended on it, and I was about to teach them an unforgettable lesson in property rights. You see, Darlene Pritchett, Hoa president, real estate agent, and full-time tyrant, thought she could intimidate a quiet engineer who wouldn't put up a fight. She was only half right. I don't fight back, I win. So tell me, what would you do if your neighbors destroyed something your grandfather built with his bare hands? Share your revenge plan in the comments, and before we go further, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country. Let's see how far this story travels. My name's Garrett Sullivan. I'm 54, a third-generation civil engineer living on 127 acres of semi-rural Pennsylvania, about 40 minutes outside Pittsburgh. It's the kind of place where mornings start with the sound of creek water over limestone instead of car horns, and where coffee comes with the smell of wet oak leaves and diesel from an old Dodge pickup. This land has been in my family since 1938, when my grandfather, Pop Sullivan, bought it during the Depression. He built everything himself: barns, fences, and most importantly, in 1943, a stone and timber bridge across Blackwater Creek. It linked our property to Old Mill Road, once the only path connecting for family farms. That bridge wasn't some weekend DIY job. Pop hauled foundation stone straight from the creek bed, milled the timber, and forged the iron brackets at the local blacksmiths. 8 months of labor and pride went into it. I grew up under that bridge, learned to fish beneath it, helped my dad replace the planks when I was 16. Every time I drove across, the crunch of gravel beneath my tires echoed Pop's voice in my head: build it right, and it'll outlast you. These days I'm semi-retired, consulting here and there, leasing a bit of land. My wife passed 2 years ago, my daughter lives in Oregon, and life's been quiet. The bridge was the last physical piece of my grandfather I still had. Then, about 18 months back, a developer bought the old Cowlick farm and turned it into Metbrook Estates, 85 upscale homes starting at $1,600 a month. Complete with gates and an HOA that acts like it governs the county. During construction, they needed a sewage easement across my property. I negotiated hard, got $12,000, and everything was done legally and filed properly. That should have been the end of it. Then came Darlene Pritchett, 62 years old, drives a Tesla Model X, sports a bleached bob haircut, initials on everything she owns. Within 3 months of moving in, she was elected Hoa president and apparently decided her mission was to reshape the world in her image. One April morning, she showed up at my door unannounced, holding a certified letter. It ordered me to tear down my bridge within 30 days, calling it both an eyesore and a flood risk, citing an HOA environmental report. I read it twice, then looked her in the eye. "Ma'am, that bridge is fully on my property. Your Hoa has no jurisdiction here," she smiled condescendingly, like a teacher correcting a slow student. Sullivan, we have records showing it's abandoned county infrastructure. We're asking you to comply with safety regulations. Your study was written by a landscaping company," I replied. "There's not a single engineer's signature on it." Her smile tightened. "We'll proceed through proper channels." Then she left. I tossed the letter in the trash, assuming she'd drop it. A week later, just after 6 a.m., the sound of a diesel engine jolted me awake. I ran outside in my boxers and work boots, no shirt, and froze. A bulldozer was tearing through my bridge. Stone cracked, timber splintered, and clouds of dust rose over the creek. I yelled at the operator. He waved me off. "Lady said it's a county demo, got a work order." "That's my bridge," I shouted. He kept going. Then I saw them 3 SUVs parked by my access road. Darlene and 2 board members stood there recording with their phones, one of them laughing. My hands shook as I called 911. The sheriff arrived 40 minutes later. By then, my bridge was rubble. The deputy took a report but said it was a civil matter and I'd have to sue. Darlene, calm as Sunday church, handed him a folder. "Officer, we removed the public hazard. We saved the county a lawsuit. Standing there, covered in dust, I realized she didn't see me as a person, just something in her way. I went back to my porch and sat down. The smell of crushed limestone hung thick in the air. The creek ran brown with debris. And that's when it hit me. If she wanted to play property games, I'd play too. Because I knew something Old Mill Road that she didn't. The next morning, I called my old high school buddy, Mitch Kowalski, a local attorney who handles land disputes and the occasional DUI. He looked over the photos of my demolished bridge and said, "Garrett, this is the clearest case of property destruction I've seen in 20 years. We filed two things: an emergency injunction to stop further damage, and a lawsuit seeking $78,000 in damages." That wasn't a random figure. It included $135,000 for reconstruction, $125,000 for historical value, and $1,180 for emotional distress. The sheriff's report was disappointingly vague: no clear criminal intent. But the county building inspector confirmed the essentials: the bridge was entirely on my property, and Darlene's crew had no permits whatsoever. Then her lawyers tried a new tactic. They filed a counterclaim saying my bridge had been public use for so long, 80 years, that it was effectively county property. Something called adverse possession. Mitch laughed when he read it. They clearly didn't do their homework, he said. Adverse possession only applies if the owner abandons the property. You've got 30 years of maintenance receipts in your filing cabinet. He was right. I had everything: records for every plank, every bag of gravel, every can of sealant. My dad always said, paperwork outlives memory in court. We submitted decades of maintenance logs, photos of private property signs, and tax records proving the bridge was part of my assessed land. The judge threw out their counterclaim in 3 weeks flat. That victory felt good, but it was only the first round. Darlene didn't quit. Her hoe doubled down, hiring a high-end Pittsburgh law firm where the marble lobby probably cost more than my house. They filed a motion claiming my suit was frivolous harassment and demanded I pay their $50,000 in legal fees. Then came the settlement offer, hand-delivered by a paralegal, in a suit worth more than my truck. The deal: I dropped my case, they dropped theirs, and in a magnanimous gesture, they'll donate $5,000 to the local Veterans Fund in my grandfather's name. Mitch brought the papers to me at the diner, sliding them across the table while I was halfway through a burger. "It's a PR move," he said quietly. "They'll tell the judge they tried to settle. They even offered a charity donation." I stared at that number. $5,000, I said. "Mitch, my grandfather spent 8 months building that bridge with his own hands. They leveled it in under 40 minutes, recording the whole thing like it was entertainment. Now they think a charity check with my grandfather's name on it makes us even. That's their angle." I slid the paper back across the table. "Tell them no." Mitch frowned. "You sure? This could get pricey." "I'm sure." That's when Darlene lost her composure completely. 2 days later, a friend sent me screenshots from Metbrook's private HOA Facebook group, 200 members. And apparently I was the headline act. Darlene's post read, "Local landowner refuses to cooperate with flood prevention measures that could protect our families. Some people value old junk over community safety." Another post mentioned me running outside in my underwear, implying I was losing it after my wife's death. The comments piled up fast: "Sounds unstable. Why won't the county step in?" One selfish guy tanking everyone's property values. By that evening, the same gossip had spread to next door. Someone started a thread titled, "Is Garrett Sullivan ruining our neighborhood?" I don't use social media, never have, but seeing strangers label me unstable and selfish, people who had no clue who I was or what really happened, hit harder than I expected. That night, Lyle called. "Garrett, you seeing what they're saying about you?" "Yeah." "You gonna respond?" I was sitting on my porch, watching the sun set over the creek. The air smelled like wet mud and the sharp tang of incoming rain. "No." "What? Why not?" "Because the second I respond, I'm playing her game. And I don't play Facebook wars, Lyle. So what are you playing? Winning?" There was a long pause. "You got a plan?" "Working on it." I hung up and reached for my old Rolodex. "Yeah, the paper kind." I'm 54, don't judge me. I started flipping through names, engineers I'd worked with over decades, surveyors who owed me favors, county clerks who remembered when handshake deals actually meant something, folks who knew where the metaphorical skeletons were buried. The next morning, my phone buzzed. It was Rosalie Chen from the county planning office. 15 years on the job, she knows every permit, zoning request, and quiet deal that sneaks through after hours. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Garrett, I probably shouldn't be telling you this. Then don't, I said. I don't want you in trouble. Too late. Listen, Darlene's been pushing hard for fast-track approvals on some Metbrook expansion plans. Community center, tennis courts, the works. And they're getting approved and usually fast. How fast? 90-day reviews getting rubber stamped in 3 weeks. And the person signing off. Commissioner Todd Gisham. I jotted the name down. Should I know him? You should. He's Darlene's boyfriend. They co-own a vacation condo in Florida. Public record. Both names on the deed. I stopped writing. You're telling me a county commissioner is fast-tracking permits for his girlfriend's hoa? I'm telling you the records don't lie. Do what you want with it. Rosalie, I owe you dinner. Be careful, Garrett. These people have friends in high places. When we hung up, I smiled for the first time in days. Because people with powerful friends always make the same mistake. They start thinking they can't be touched. And when you believe that, you get careless. I spent the next 2 days buried in the county clerk's office, combing through everything: property records, easement deeds, utility rights of way. Even old survey maps from the 1940s that smelled like dust and history. I've spent 30 years as a civil engineer decoding blueprints that make most people's eyes glaze over. But that week, I wasn't reading. I was hunting. And I found something. Something big. I didn't tell Mitch. Didn't tell Lyle. Didn't tell anyone. In poker, you don't show your cards until the pot's worth it. Friday afternoon, Mitch called. Darlene's attorneys are pushing for a hearing next month. They're asking the judge to throw out your case and make you pay their legal fees. Let them push. Garrett, you sound way too calm for a guy staring down a $50,000 judgment. I was at the window, looking toward Metbrook in the distance. You could barely make out the rooftops through the trees, but the streetlights were flickering on as the evening settled in. Mitch, you're gonna have to trust me. Trust you on what? Just keep filing motions. Keep them busy. Busy with what? I smiled. Insurance. What I didn't tell him and wasn't ready to tell anyone was that I'd just discovered the key to making Darlene Pritchett regret ever hearing the name Sullivan. It hinged on one perfect, unbreakable word: easement. For the next week, I practically lived in the records office. Picture a detective in a bad noir movie, except instead of whiskey and cigarettes, I had black coffee and 3-ring binders that smelled like 1987. By day 3, Martha, the main clerk, stopped even asking what I needed. She just started pulling document boxes before I walked in. You looking for something specific, Garrett, or just allergic to sunlight now? She joked. A little of both, I said, and she laughed, the kind of laugh that comes from someone who's seen enough land disputes to know exactly how they end. I went through every document tied to Metbrook Estates: building permits, utility hookups, sewage system approvals, environmental studies, zoning variances. Built a color-coded spreadsheet, cross-referenced and footnoted like I was prepping for a trial. My daughter would have been proud, or maybe worried for my sanity. That's when I spotted it: the crack in Darlene's armor. Metbrook's private sewage plant, which served all 85 homes, had received conditional approval from the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection. Back in 2023, that word conditional mattered. It meant temporary approval, pending final upgrades and inspections within 18 months. When I checked the file, the deadline had passed 14 months earlier. They'd missed it. Then I found 2 extension requests, both approved by the DEP's regional office, both containing recommendation letters. Guess who signed them? Commissioner Todd Gisham, Darlene's boyfriend. I leaned back in my chair, which creaked loud enough to echo through the government building. Martha, I called. I need copies of all this. She sighed. How many trees we killing today? All of them, I said with a grin. That night, I called an old contact, Brianna Hoare, one of my former interns. These days, she's an environmental engineer in Philadelphia with more credentials than I can count. She answered over the roar of a stadium crowd. "Garrett Sullivan," she shouted. "This better be good. The Phillies are losing and you're interrupting my misery." I explained the issue with the expired permit, and she gave a low whistle. "If they're operating under an expired conditional permit, that's a clear violation," she said. "The department won't notice unless someone reports it. But once it's flagged, they're required to inspect within 60 days. And if the system fails inspection, it could be shut down entirely. Every resident would have to haul their own sewage about $400 per house per month until it's fixed. Could take 6 months, easy." I asked if she could send me the complaint form. She hesitated. "Garrett, if you file this, you're dropping a bomb." "You sure you want to do that?" I told her I'd think about it, though my mind was already made up. The next day, Darlene decided for me 3 county code citations arrived by certified mail, all dated the same day. The first was for an unlicensed junk vehicle, my dad's 1979 F-150, parked behind the barn for 15 years without ever bothering anyone. The second, unsecured burn pile and ash heap left over from brush clearing. The third, illegal signage. Apparently my no trespassing signs were 2 inches too tall under township rules. Each fine came with a $150 per day penalty if not fixed within 10 days. I called the code enforcement officer, a jittery kid named Tyler who couldn't have been older than 24. "Tyler," I said, "I've lived here my whole life. Why am I suddenly getting hit with citations for stuff that's been here forever?" He hesitated, then lowered his voice. "Murdoch Sullivan, I was told to drive by your place daily and record any violations. I'm just doing my job." Asked who gave the order. He wouldn't answer, but he didn't need to. Only one person had that kind of influence. I snapped photos of the citations and texted them to Lyle. He called back immediately, furious. "Garrett, nobody else in the township's been cited in 6 months. This is targeted harassment." "I know," I said, "and I've got a plan." There was silence on his end before his familiar wheezing laugh broke through. "You're actually gonna do it?" "Yeah," I said. "Then I want a front row seat when it all blows up." That afternoon, I filled out Brianna's Department of Public Health complaint form, attached copies of the expired permit and Gisham's recommendation letters, and mailed it. Then I called Mitch and told him to file a counter-complaint for harassment, selective enforcement, and abuse of authority, before hanging up. I asked him to pull one more thing, the original plat map for Old Mill Road from 1952. He asked why. "I'll explain later," I said. "I've got a hunch it might change everything." He promised to have it by week's end. That evening, I stood on my porch as the sun sank behind the trees. The air carried the scent of freshly cut grass and faint diesel from Highway 29. Somewhere in the distance, Meadowbrook's landscaping crew buzzed with their endless leaf blowers, a constant hum in neighborhoods like ours. I smiled to myself. In about 60 days, the Department of Public Health would show up at Darlene's doorstep with clipboards and bad news, and she'd have no idea who'd set it in motion. Sometimes the best revenge isn't loud. It's quiet, typed in triplicate, and mailed to a government agency that couldn't care less who you're dating. The citations didn't stop. Every 3 days, like clockwork, Tyler appeared with a new one. My mailbox was 6 inches too far from the road. My gravel driveway was too dusty. My firewood stack was visible from the public right-of-way and counted as visual blight. Each came with the same $150 a day threat. At first, I fixed the small ones just to avoid the hassle. But by the 5th notice, I'd had enough. I called Mitch. "This is straight-up harassment," he said flatly. "Document everything. We'll bury them in court." But court takes time, and Darlene knew that. She was trying to bleed me out with 1,000 paper cuts, hoping I'd cave before the real fight began. Then, out of nowhere, I had a visitor. Sunday afternoon, a man in his early 50s, looking uncomfortable, knocked on my door. "Mr. Sullivan, I'm Ken Ashford. I live in Meadowbrook. I need to talk to you about Darlene Pritchett." I invited him in, made coffee, and waited. Ken sat at my kitchen table, hands cupped around his mug like it was keeping him grounded. "I'm the whole treasurer," he said quietly. "It's an elected position and I've been tracking financial irregularities for 6 months." He opened a folder and spread papers across the table: bank statements, invoices, and meeting minutes that didn't line up. Darlene's been paying herself consulting fees for $1,000 a month. Not in the bylaws, and nobody approved it. And this, he pointed to an invoice dated the day after my bridge was torn down. She used HOA funds to pay for it. $28,000, listed as emergency infrastructure repair, no board vote. Then she falsified the meeting minutes to cover it up. I stared at the paperwork. $28,000 of other people's money spent to destroy my bridge. "Ken, why are you showing me this?" I asked. He met my eyes. "Because what she did to you was wrong. And because she fined my wife $500 for planting the wrong color roses. I'm done living under her rule." I warned him about the risk if Darlene found out. She'd make his life miserable. He gave a grim smile. "She already does. At least now I'm fighting back." I made copies of everything and shook his hand. "You're a good man, Ken." He shrugged. "Just an accountant who hates fraud." After he left, I sat with the documents and started connecting the dots: the expired permit, Gisham's recommendation letters, the falsified home minutes, the embezzlement. It wasn't about my bridge anymore. Darlene and her boyfriend had built an entire web of corruption, and no one had ever bothered to look closely until now. I picked up my phone and called Andrea Walsh, a local journalist known for exposing county corruption. "Andrea, it's Garrett Sullivan. I've got a story for you." She sounded intrigued but wary. "I read about the bridge dispute. It's bigger than that," I said. "Much bigger. Think county commissioners taking developer money, whole presidents embezzling funds, and environmental permits being buried." There was a long pause on the other end. Andrea's tone was serious. "Mr. Sullivan, if you really mean this, I'll need documentation. I've got 400 pages of it," I told her. "When can we meet?" she asked. The next day, we met at a roadside diner halfway to Pittsburgh. I arrived with a binder full of evidence. She came armed with a recorder and a yellow legal pad. For 2 straight hours, I walked her through everything start to finish: the bridge demolition, the constant code enforcement harassment, Gisham's conflict of interest, the expired septic permit, Kent's financial proof of embezzlement and fraud. She took notes like a machine, asked sharp, precise questions, and flagged certain documents for copies. When I finally wrapped up, she leaned back, exhaled slowly, and said, "This isn't just a complaint, Mr. Sullivan. It's a real scandal. But I need to independently verify some of it before I can publish. Give me a week." I told her to take her time but to stay cautious. Darlene had allies in county offices. Andrea just smiled. "Garrett, I've been doing this 15 years. I know how to protect my sources." 5 days later, her article went live. The headline hit first online: "County Commissioner linked to developer and land dispute, ethics questions raised." The piece detailed Gisham's connection to Darlene, the fast-track permits, and the campaign donations from Meadowbrooks. HOA PAC with Darlene listed as treasurer. She held off mentioning the embezzlement for now, waiting until Kent's documents were verified, but the fallout was immediate. A Pittsburgh TV station picked it up by evening. News vans swarmed the courthouse steps. Gisham issued a flat denial, yet within 48 hours, the county ethics board had announced an investigation. My phone lit up: nonstop reporters requesting interviews, township supervisors suddenly concerned about my code complaints, even a few Meadowbrook residents calling to apologize. I ignored most of them, sat on my porch as the sun dropped over the creek, and just smiled. For the first time since that bulldozer showed up, Darlene wasn't controlling the narrative, I was. And she didn't even know how much more I still had ready to drop. The old road, the expired easement, the DPH complaint moving quietly through bureaucracy. I was only warming up. That night, Lyle texted, "You magnificent bastard. She's spiraling. I texted back, good. The firestorm around Gisham burned for 3 days until Andrea called me Tuesday morning, her voice practically crackling with adrenaline. Garrett, I verified Kent's documents. The embezzlement piece runs tomorrow. Just wanted to warn you it's going to get ugly. I thanked her, hung up, and dialed Mitch. It's time, I said. Let's show them what I actually own. The next morning, while Andrea's embezzlement story was lighting up every newsfeed, Mitch filed 2 documents with the county clerk. First, formal notice that public access to Old Mill Road would be revoked in 30 days. Second, notice that the utility easement Meadowbrook had been using for their sewage and power lines had expired due to a clerical oversight and I wasn't renewing it. Both filings were public record. Both entirely legal. And both hit Darlene's crumbling world like grenades. Within an hour, the county engineer's office called. Panic evident, Mr. Sullivan, we're reviewing your filing about Old Mill Road. Our records show it as a public route. I calmly explained they were mistaken. The road had never been deeded to the county, and I had the 1952 survey to prove it. There was silence, then the frantic rustling of papers. Sir, if you close that road, Meadowbrook Estates loses its secondary emergency access. Fire response times could triple. I told him that wasn't my concern. I was exercising my rights as a private property owner. He muttered something about escalating this and hung up so fast I heard the phone clatter. Then the flood began. Calls from the fire chief, township board members, county planners, all suddenly worried about public safety and community welfare. My response was the same every time: Old Mill Road is private and always has been. If Meadowbrook wants to keep using it, they can negotiate an easement at fair market value. One supervisor sputtered, but Mr. Sullivan, you can't just actually, sir, I interrupted. I can. Check your deed records. By noon, reporters had the story. Andrea called again, excitement bubbling through her voice. Garrett, is it true you own the only alternate access into Meadowbrook? I confirmed it. She laughed a sharp, disbelieving sound. They demolished your bridge, and you own their backup road. That's poetic. It gets better, I told her. Their utility easement expired months ago. They've been running power and sewage across my property illegally. By noon, reporters had the story. Andrea called again, excitement bubbling through her voice. Garrett, is it true you own the only alternate access into Meadowbrook? I confirmed it. She laughed a sharp, disbelieving sound. They demolished your bridge, and you own their backup road. That's poetic. It gets better, I told her. Their utility easement expired months ago. They've been running power and sewage across my property illegally. Residents shouting, demanding Darlene resign, threatening lawsuits, some already calling real estate agents before property values tanked. By Friday morning, a recording of the meeting had leaked, probably from several people. I sat in my truck with the windows down, the sun warm on my arm, the scent of cut hay in the air, listening. Darlene's voice came through, shaky and defensive. This is just a legal technicality. Our attorneys are handling it. There's no real threat. A man cut her off, furious. You told us everything was handled. Now we find out our president embezzled funds and we might lose sewage service. Another voice, older and trembling. My mother's 78. What happens if there's an emergency and ambulances can't get through because you angered the wrong neighbor? Darlene had nothing. Just hollow excuses and stammering reassurances. That Friday evening, I sat on my porch watching the sky fade from orange to deep purple, the creek murmuring below. For the first time in months, I felt something solid: control. Not revenge, not yet, just the quiet satisfaction of knowing every piece of infrastructure that mattered was in my hands. Roads.utilities.access. They weren't luxuries. They were power. And now, I own them all. A text buzzed from Lyle. Bro, the Meadowbrook Facebook group is in full meltdown. This is better than any poker game we've ever played. I couldn't help smiling as I typed back, game's not over yet. Now comes the fun part. By Saturday morning, my kitchen had turned into a makeshift war room. 5 people showed up before 9, the smell of strong coffee mixing with that tense excitement that comes right before either a brilliant move or a total disaster. Mitch took command of the kitchen table, surrounded by a fortress of legal pads stacked like ammunition. Lyle leaned against the counter, grinning like a kid and wrapping presents. Rosalie from the county planning office had her laptop open and a flash drive she definitely shouldn't have taken out of her Vice. Judge Harlan Meek 76, retired. And still sharp as a tack was flipping through paperwork, glasses low on his nose, and Brianna Hull, my former intern turned environmental engineer, had driven up from Philadelphia with a binder full of DEP regulations thick enough to double as a weapon. "All right," Mitch said, clicking his pen in that steady rhythm he always does when he's plotting. "Let's talk endgame." Garrett's holding all the cards. He's got the road, the expired easement, public sympathy, and Darlene's under investigation. The question is, what do you actually want out of this? I've been mulling that over for days. Not revenge, I said finally. Not collateral damage. Just justice. I want my bridge rebuilt authentically, with the right materials. I want a public apology from the HOA and the local paper. Fair compensation for the easement market rate, not their cheap offer. And I want Darlene Pritchett removed as whole president. The room went quiet. Judge Meeks looked up over his glasses. "Son, that's all reasonable. But here's what you need to remember: if you push too hard, you turn into the villain. Juries and judges don't forget a sore winner. You've got to give them a little room to save face." "Not much, but something," Lyle snorted. "Judge, she demolished his grandfather's bridge and filmed it while laughing. How much face does she deserve?" The judge gave a small smile. "Legally, none. Strategically, just enough for Garrett to look like the hero, not the hammer." I asked, "So how do we pull that off?" Brianna spoke first. "The DEP complaint I helped file is already in their system. They'll inspect Meadowbrook's sewage treatment plant within 60 days. When not if it fails, the state will force upgrades or shut it down. That's not revenge. That's just bureaucracy doing its job." Rosalie nodded. "Same with the ethics probe on Gisham. That's official now. Once those findings go public, it shows corruption completely separate from any personal motive, open to the public. Darlene can't hide behind lawyers in private. You lay out your terms in front of residents, reporters, everyone. If she agrees, great. If she refuses, you come out looking calm and fair and she looks like the problem." I nodded. "Sunlight's the best disinfectant." Judge Meeks tapped the packet. "Make the terms airtight. No vague language she can twist later." Brianna suggested numbers. $500 a month for 20 years. That's fair market value for rural Pennsylvania utility access. I checked 3 comparable properties. For the bridge, Mitch added, you'll get 3 licensed contractor bids. And the whole covers the median cost. No haggling, no substitutions. I paused. Thinking, and the apology. It has to name me personally, mention my grandfather, admit the demolition was unauthorized and wrong. It runs for 2 consecutive weeks in the Township Gazette and gets posted at Meadowbrook's entrance where everyone can see it. Rosalie grinned. "Oh, Darlene's going to lose her mind." I shrugged. "She should have thought of that before she brought in the bulldozer." Then we got down to the risks. "What if she refuses outright?" I asked. Mitch leaned back. "Legally, you can shut down the road and revoke the easement, but that punishes the residents too, and public opinion could swing against you fast. You don't want to be the guy who blocks an ambulance on its way to Grandma," Mitch said flatly. Judge Meeks leaned forward, offering a middle ground. "Close the road to normal traffic, but allow exceptions for emergency vehicles, fire trucks, ambulances, police. Let them through. Everyone else, soccer moms, commuters, they can take the detour around Highway 29. That keeps pressure on the whole without putting anyone's safety at risk." Brianna chimed in. "Same goes for utilities. Don't cut them off right away. Notify them that the easement has expired and give them 30 days to renegotiate. If they still ignore you, then you pull the plug." We spent the next hour running through every possible scenario. What if she countersued? What if the residents started a petition? What if the press turned the story against me? By the time everyone packed up and left around noon, I had a strategy that felt airtight and a binder so thick it could double as a doorstop. Lyle lingered by the door, clapping a hand on my shoulder. "Garrett, I've known you for 30 years. Never seen you like this. What do you mean?" I asked. He grinned. Double quotes focused. Intense. Honestly. A little scary. Remind me never to get on your bad side. I laughed. Lyle, I'm not scary. I'm just an engineer who actually reads the fine print. When the house finally quieted, I stood by the kitchen window, looking out toward Meadowbrook. You could barely see it through the trees, but I knew it was there: the manicured streets, the identical mailboxes, and the whole president who thought she was untouchable. The air still smelled like coffee and photocopied legal paper, the musty scent old documents get after too many runs through a machine. Outside, a crow landed on my porch railing and tilted its head, almost as if asking what came next. I smiled. The next step was simple. Darlene Pritchett would get exactly one chance to do the right thing. And when she didn't, because people like her never do, I'd show her what happens when you destroy a bridge built by someone who actually understands infrastructure. Her world was cracking, and desperate people make reckless choices. I should have seen it coming. Monday night, 2:30 a.m. The sound of chainsaws ripped through the darkness. Not distant clothes. On my property. I threw on boots over sweatpants, grabbed my phone, and ran outside. Two men I didn't recognize were cutting down the oaks along Old Mill Road, sending 60-year-old trees crashing onto the asphalt in clouds of sawdust. The air was thick with the smell of fresh cut wood and gasoline, sharpened by that crisp Pennsylvania spring night air. I started filming as I sprinted toward them, shouting over the roar. "This is private property." "What the hell do you think you're doing?" The man with the chainsaw looked up, saw me, shouted something to his partner. They dropped their tools and bolted for a white rental pickup. I got close enough to capture their faces and the truck's license plate as they peeled away, gravel spraying. My hands were shaking as I called 911. I told the dispatcher vandals were cutting down trees on my land, gave her the location, said I had the video. She told me a deputy was 20 minutes out. I walked the damage with my phone flashlight. For trees down to blocking the road completely, to more half-cut and leaning dangerously. If I hadn't woken up, Old Mill Road would have been impassable for weeks. The message couldn't have been clearer. If they couldn't secure access to my road, they'd make sure no one else could use it either. Destroy my leverage, standing there, surrounded by sawdust and creaking branches. I felt my jaw tighten. This wasn't a legal battle anymore. This was war. Deputy Collins arrived. 40 minutes later, the same officer who'd handled the bridge demolition. He inspected the scene, took photos, and replayed my video 3 times. "Garrett, this is criminal mischief at minimum. Maybe even conspiracy. You pressing charges. Can you identify them?" I asked. He zoomed in on a frame showing the rental company's logo. "I'll trace it." Then he pointed at a glove half buried in the dirt. "They dropped this running. Might get prints." He bagged it carefully. "Watch your back, Garrett. You've made enemies." The next morning, Collins called. Ran the truck. Paid for with a credit card belonging to a Marcus Pritchett. "Who's that?" I asked. "Darlene's son. 29. Works at her real estate office." There it was. "Can we charge him?" Collins hesitated. "We can prove he rented the truck. That's it. Unless one of those guys talks and says Darlene ordered it, she's insulated." "What would you do?" I asked. He sighed. "Honestly, let it sit. If you file criminal charges now, it'll freeze your civil case for months. But as leverage, it's gold." I called Mitch right away. He listened silently, then started laughing, his low, dark lawyer laugh that meant someone had just made a serious mistake. "Garrett," he said, "don't use this yet. Save it for the mediation. When Darlene's sitting across from you, press, township, everyone watching you, show that video. Don't accuse her. Just mention that her son rented the truck used in the crime. Let the room connect the dots." For the first time since the chainsaws, I smiled. Chess, not checkers, Mitch said with a nod. And right now, you're 3 moves ahead, but Darlene wasn't done yet. Over the next week, things took a darker turn. I started getting anonymous calls, someone breathing into the line, then hanging up. 5 times in 3 days. My truck got egged outside the diner, the yolk baked into the paint under the afternoon sun. Then Thursday morning, I found a dead raccoon laid out on my porch, deliberately positioned, unmistakably a message. None of it was enough for a police report, but it was meant to shake me, to make me back off. Lyle stopped by that evening, took one look at the raccoon, and sighed. "She's unraveling," he said. "This is what bullies do when they're losing, they lash out." "Think it'll get worse?" I asked. He met my eyes. "Probably. But you've got cameras, records, and the law behind you. She's got nothing but panic." I know which side I'd rather be on. Friday came, and I attended the township supervisor's meeting. I sat quietly in the back, didn't say a word, but people noticed. During public comment, 3 Meadowbrook residents stood up and complained about me, accusing me of holding the neighborhood hostage, endangering public safety. One even suggested using eminent domain to seize my road. The supervisors turned to me. "Mr. Ashford, would you like to respond?" I stood, kept my tone calm. "I'm not holding anyone hostage. I'm exercising my property rights. If Meadowbrook wants access, they can negotiate through my attorney. But I'm not giving away what I own, especially not to the same people who destroyed my family's bridge." I sat back down. One of the supervisors nodded. "Mr. Sullivan, we'll schedule a public mediation hearing 2 weeks from today." I thanked him and left. In the parking lot, I spotted Darlene's Tesla 3 spaces away. She sat behind the wheel, staring at me through the windshield. Our eyes met. She didn't look angry anymore, she looked scared. Good. In 2 weeks, in front of the entire township, I'd put everything on the record, what she'd done, what it had cost, and what it would take to make it right. There'd be no more hiding. The week leading up to the mediation, everything accelerated. Sunday afternoon, Ken knocked on my door, looking like he hadn't slept in days. "Garrett, we need to talk." Now, I let him in, made coffee we never drank, and waited. He opened a laptop and set a stack of freshly printed papers on the table, the pages still warm. "I got removed as whole treasurer on Friday," he said. "Darlene called an emergency vote. Claimed I was causing unnecessary conflict. 3 of her loyalists voted me out." He turned the laptop toward me. "But before they locked me out of the system, I downloaded everything, 2 years of bank records, every payment, every invoice." Highlighted lines on the screen told a story that made my stomach twist. Darlene had been paying herself consulting fees for $1,000 a month for 18 months, $72,000 total. Never approved, never recorded in any meeting minutes. Then there were the vendor payments to her nephew's landscaping company. Her brother-in-law's hook from all grossly inflated, conservative estimate, Kent said quietly. She's siphoned off about $200,000 from whole funds into her family's pockets. I stared at the numbers, feeling that cold, steady anger when corruption finally reveals its full size. "Why bring this to me, Kent? Why not the police?" He shut the laptop with a click that sounded too loud in the stillness. "I did. Filed a complaint with the DAW on Friday. They said it's civil. Told me to hire a lawyer. They won't touch it unless it's outright fraud, and Darlene's covered herself. Everything's labeled as legitimate expenses, just grossly inflated and paid to relatives." He met my gaze. "So, I'm bringing it to you. You're the only one standing up to her and actually making progress." I put Mitch on speaker and had Kent walk him through the documents. Mitch let out a low whistle. "This is classic self-dealing and breach of fiduciary duty. Every whole member has grounds to sue her personally. And Garrett, this completely destroys her credibility before mediation. Can we use it directly?" I asked. Mitch thought for a moment. "You're not a Meadowbrook resident, so their finances aren't technically your battle. But if Kent goes public, I will." Kent interrupted. "I'll testify. Give interviews, whatever it takes. She's been robbing 85 families. Including mine." I called Andrea Walsh. 2 hours later, we were sitting at the diner. Her laptop open as she cross-referenced Kent's data with county records. Mitch thought for a moment. You're not a Meadowbrook resident, so their finances aren't technically your battle. But if Kent goes public, I will. Kent interrupted. I'll testify. Give interviews, whatever it takes. She's been robbing 85 families, including mine. I called Andrea Walsh. 2 hours later, we were sitting at the diner. Her laptop open as she cross-referenced Kent's data with county records. Meadowbrook Hall president accused of self-dealing. Documents reveal payments to family members. Andrea's reporting was airtight. She'd confirmed inflated bids. Even got one vendor to admit Darlene had been taking referral kickbacks she'd interviewed for residents anonymously. The piece was devastating. By noon, Meadowbrook's Facebook group was in chaos, residents demanding Darlene's resignation, threatening lawsuits, launching recall petitions. The DA's office suddenly decided to review the case. And Darlene, silence. No statement. No defense. Her voicemail was full. Her social media completely dark. Thursday night, Kent texted me, emergency whole meeting. Board's voting on Darlene's removal. FYI, I didn't go, it's not my place. Still, he kept sending updates. 70 residents filled the room. Darlene tried to justify herself, insisting the payments were routine and approved by past boards. No one believed her. The board voted 4-1 to remove her as president, effective immediately. Then, the residents voted to suspend her membership until a full audit and possible legal review could be completed. Kent's last message read, she stormed out. People shouting all the way to her car, "It's over." I sat on my porch, reading those texts as dusk settled around me. The air carried that charged, metallic scent that comes before rain. The creek behind my house was louder than usual, swollen from storms, and somewhere far off, a dog barked at something only it could see. Then my phone rang. Lyle, laughing. Did you see? She's done. They're talking criminal charges. Mediation's Friday. She's showing up empty-handed. I told him I'd heard. He kept going. Garrett, you won. She's finished. But it didn't feel like victory. I hadn't wanted to destroy Darlene, I just wanted what I was owed. And what I was owed wasn't her humiliation. It was a bridge. I called Mitch. Friday's mediation. I want it clear, I'm not showing up to gloat or twist the knife. I just want my bridge rebuilt so I can move on. There was a long pause. Garrett, you're being kinder than she deserves, Mitch said. But don't give away too much. She still owes you everything. I watched the sun sink behind the trees, turning the clouds the color of a fresh bruise. I know what she owes, I said. But I also know Pops wouldn't want me winning by being cruel. He'd want me winning by being right. Mitch chuckled softly. Fair enough. See you Friday. Let's finish this. Friday, 7 p.m. The Township Municipal Hall was bursting, capacity 150, but easily 200 packed in. People stood shoulder to shoulder, lined the walls, sat in the aisles. The air was thick with the smell of burnt coffee, old paper, and nervous sweat. 3 news crews streamed live. More than 5,000 people were watching online. I sat at one table with Mitch. Across from us, Darlene and a nervous-looking young attorney, probably the only one willing to represent her. She looked smaller somehow, no perfect hair, no Tesla keys, no monogrammed folders. Just a woman who'd run out of road. Supervisor Chen opened the session. This mediation concerns the dispute between Mr. Garrett Sullivan and the Meadowbrook Estates homeowner. Sullivan requested this hearing. Please proceed. I stood. No notes needed. I'd lived this for 2 months. Supervisors, neighbors, media, thank you for coming. I'll keep this brief. Mitch opened the laptop. On the screen, a photo of my bridge before demolition. Built by my grandfather in 1943, 80 years old and sturdy. On April 16, 6:04 a.m., Meadowbrook Hall President Darlene Pritchett ordered this bridge demolished. It stood on my property, fully legal, and was destroyed without permission, without permits, and without any authority. Next photo, bulldozer mid-swing. In the background, Darlene and several board members holding phones. One laughing. The room fell silent except for the clicks of reporters' cameras. Then came screenshots Darlene calling me unstable on Facebook, accusing me of blocking safety upgrades. Then code violation notices petty, targeted, relentless. Even code enforcement had admitted they'd been told to go after me. Darlene's lawyer whispered urgently, but she just stared down at the table. Then I played the chainsaw video, men cutting trees at 2:30 a.m., running when confronted. A sabotage attempt. The sheriff traced the rental truck back to Marcus Pritchett, her son. The room buzzed with murmurs. Darlene went pale. I haven't pressed charges, I said. Because I'm not after revenge. I want justice. I turned off the projector and faced the crowd. During this fight, I found something else. I own Old Mill Road, the private road Matt Brook uses for emergency access. I hold the 1952 deed. Their utility easement for sewage and power expired 14 months ago due to their clerical error. They've been operating illegally. Gasps rippled through the residence. I could close that road tomorrow, cut utilities, and I'd be fully within my rights. I paused. But I won't, because that would punish innocent people. And they're not the ones I'm angry with. I pulled out a set of papers. Here's how we make this right. Matt Brook pays $78,000 for bridge damages and covers full reconstruction, historically accurate. Around $120,000 total. A written public apology in the Gazette for 2 weeks. A new easement agreement, $500 monthly for 20 years, plus free emergency access. And all harassment stops. No more weaponized code enforcement. No more sabotage. No more intimidation. I looked straight at Darlene. You thought you could bulldoze a quiet engineer because I wouldn't fight back. You were half right. I didn't fight back, I fought smart. I read the deeds. I pulled the permits myself and documented every step. My voice dropped low. My grandfather spent 8 months building that bridge with his own hands. You tore it down in 40 minutes and laughed while doing it. So, here's what's going to happen. Matt Brook agrees to these terms, or I shut down Old Mill Road on Monday and cut utilities within 30 days. The room exploded, reporters shouting, residents yelling over each other. Supervisor Chen called for order. After a minute of chaos, he announced a 15-minute recess. Darlene and her lawyer huddled in a corner, whispering. I sat back, hands steady for the first time in weeks. When we reconvened, Matt Brook's interim board president, a nervous accountant named Patterson, rose to speak. Sullivan, the board has reviewed your terms, he said. We accept all of them and will have the formal documents ready by Monday. He looked toward Darlene, his expression sharp with disappointment. On behalf of the community, I apologize. What happened to your bridge was wrong. What came after was worse. We'll make it right. Chen turned to Darlene. Ms. Pritchett, anything you'd like to add? She stood slowly, face blank. For a second, I thought she might apologize. Instead, she said softly, I acted in what I believed were the community's best interests. That was all. No remorse, no responsibility, just deflection. Chen's tone hardened. The terms are accepted. This mediation is concluded. The room erupted again, reporters surging forward, residents crowding Patterson, cameras flashing. I stayed seated, watching Darlene walk toward the exit. People stepped aside as if she carried a contagion. At the doorway, she turned to look at me one last time. I met her eyes, calm and steady. No gloating. No triumph, just finality. Outside, the night air was cool and smelled faintly of fresh-cut grass from the township lawn. Lyle waited beside my truck, grinning. You did it, man. You actually did it. Mitch clapped a hand on my shoulder. Garrett, in 30 years of law, I've never seen anyone dismantle an opponent that completely without raising their voice. I looked up at the stars. The sky was clear, the Milky Way spilling overhead like salt across black velvet. I didn't dismantle her, Mitch. She dismantled herself. I just showed everyone the proof. We stood there for a moment before I climbed into my truck, drove home, and sat on my porch. For the first time since the bulldozer arrived, I felt something close to peace. By Wednesday, The settlement documents were signed. $78,000 in damages hit my account. That Friday, the formal apology appeared in the Township Gazette the following week, half a page, stiff and official, signed by the interim board. Darlene's name was noticeably missing, but no one needed to see it to know. The second week it ran, someone taped a copy of the apology to the Met Brook entrance sign. It stayed there for 3 days before anyone took it down. Bridge reconstruction began in early June. I hired Vernon, a stonemason recommended by the Historical Society, a craftsman who'd restored 3 covered bridges in the county and actually understood what historically accurate meant. We used stones pulled straight from the creek, just like Pops had done, and fresh oak timber milled from my own land. The new bridge was an exact replica of the 1943 original but reinforced to meet modern safety standards. The final cost came in at $118,000 under budget. Vernon said that never happens, but I think he gave me a break because he believed in what we were building. In July, I hosted a community stone setting day, an open volunteer event. I expected 20 people. 67 showed up. Families, retirees, even a few Met Brook residents who wanted to help repair what their hoa had broken. We worked from 8 to 4. Someone organized a potluck on my lawn, fried chicken, potato salad, pies gone before I could blink. Kids painted decorative stones for the path leading up to the bridge. One little girl, maybe 7, asked why the bridge mattered so much. I told her, my grandfather built it so people could help each other. That's what bridges are for. She nodded like that made perfect sense and went back to painting flowers on her rock. The dedication ceremony took place in September. A limestone post held a new plaque, Sullivan Bridge, built 1943 by William Pop Sullivan, rebuilt 2025 by the community. My daughter flew in from Oregon with my 2 grandkids, ages 5 and 3. Judge Meeks gave a short but powerful speech about legacy and accountability that left half the crowd wiping their eyes. When it was my turn, I kept it simple. Pops always said a bridge connects people. This one almost tore us apart, but in the end, it brought us back together. That's what he would have wanted. My granddaughter raced across the bridge, laughter echoing over the rushing creek, and the scent of fresh-cut oak planks. In that moment, with her joy blending into the sound of water below, I knew we had done something right. The real impact came afterward. I founded the Pop Sullivan Trade Scholarship, a yearly $5,000 award for local high school students pursuing civil engineering, construction, or skilled trades. I funded it with $100,000 from the settlement, set up as a lasting trust. The very first recipient was Kent's daughter, just 17, who dreams of becoming a land surveyor. At the awards ceremony, she told me her dad talks a lot about integrity now, about standing up when something isn't right. She said watching him help me gave her the courage to speak up, too. That touched me deeper than I expected. Met Brook changed as well. Residents elected a new board, one that introduced transparency policies, monthly financial reports posted online, every vote recorded, independent audits every year. Several neighbors thanked me personally. "You saved us from worse corruption later," one said. I didn't feel like a savior. I just felt like someone who refused to let a bully win. My case even led the county to improve its permit tracking system after exposing how easily things had slipped through. Old Mill Road was designated with an official historical marker. As for Darlene, she moved out 3 months after the mediation, sold her house at a loss. Last I heard, she'd settled somewhere in Arizona. I rarely think about her anymore. About 6 months after the bridge dedication, on a cold March morning, I sat on my porch with a mug of coffee, watching the sunrise turn the creek into ribbons of orange and gold. My phone buzzed, a message from Patterson, Met Brook's new president. "Sullivan, spring potluck this Saturday. You're invited as guest of honor. No pressure, just wanted you to know you're welcome." I smiled and texted back, "I'll bring potato salad." Later that afternoon, I walked down to the bridge and brushed my hand across the smooth stones, already soft with patches of moss, like it had always belonged there. A pickup rolled across, the driver waved. I waved back. That's when I truly understood what Pops meant about building things that last, not just the stone and timber, but the connections, the trust, and the belief that when something's torn down, a community can always choose to rebuild it stronger. Now, let me ask you this: have you ever faced an overreaching hoe, a crooked board, or a neighbor who thought they were untouchable? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear how you stood your ground. And if you're still fighting your own battle, tell us where you're stuck. This community's got your back. If seeing justice served makes your day, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. We've got plenty more stories of underdogs standing tall against the system. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded, when you've got the truth, the law, and the deed on your side, you can win. And to every bully out there, remember, you can't win when you're wrong, not when people are watching. Next time, a landlord tries to evict a tenant over unauthorized repairs. Big mistake, the tenant's a licensed contractor, and the building. 47 code violations. You won't believe how it ends. That's all for today's episode of Ho Stories. If you enjoyed watching Karma Catch Up, smash that like button, leave a comment, and tell us your own HOA nightmare.